Aloha, this is Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate, and this is Maui Real Estate Radio. You're joining me today with my co-host, Byron Yap of Axia Home Loans. Say hi, Byron.
Good morning.
All right, and we have Lee Chamberlain, who's joining us today, who I've known for a really long time, and we've worked in the past about connecting bicycle and cyclery with separate access, and he is heading out West Maui Greenway. Lee, say hi.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And then we have Joanna Zeigler, which she's over on Oahu, and she is coming to us today to talk about our Children's Trust at Hawaii during the second half of the show. Say hello.
Hi, good morning.
All right. So I wanted to start out a little bit with some backstory. Lee, I also happen to own the paintball field out in Olowalu, and I have an e-bike. I built my own e-bike probably close to 6 years ago, and really got into it. And I love an e-bike because it's a fantastic way to get around. It's incredibly affordable, low maintenance. And most importantly, you can have those small breaks while you're cycling. So you can either push yourself and get your maximum exercise, or of course, let the bike do the work. Mine's a pedal assist, which is fantastic. It means depending on the setting I choose, it gives me a little bit of power, depending on how much I ask of it. And of course, I can just hit a throttle if I need to kind of go along. So we were working on implementing something that was called Complete Streets, which is like a 70s or 80s program about incorporating, alternative transportation and cyclery into day-to-day lives. And it kind of spun our wheels, and Lee will get into a lot more with that. But that's how I got to meet him. And then more recently, Lee has been working on the West Maui Greenway, which is the expanded version of that. So Lee, you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your history, with bicycles and also the West Maui Greenway.
Be happy to. Thanks, Clint, for the opportunity to share my experience here with this. So years ago, after I retired, I got into motorcycle riding, adventure motorcycle riding. Unfortunately, I had a couple of instances, a couple of years in a row, including breaking my right collarbone. In one instance, breaking my left collarbone, breaking my shoulder blade, breaking center ribs, puncturing my lung, and so on and so forth. And at that point, my wife made a point finding me in the hospital that second time, said I should look at alternative things to do other than ride motorcycles. So I was laying around the hospital contemplating, okay, what am I going to do next? And I think, well, maybe I'll ride bicycle. That sounds like a good idea. My wife can't keep up with me on a bicycle. So I heard about these electric bikes that I thought was kind of interesting. I thought that maybe she could keep up with me on electric bikes. So I took her down to San Francisco to try out electric bikes. And so she went out and rode up and down the hills and came back. And I said, well, what do you think? And she goes, I think they're awesome. So I said, okay, I'll buy you that electric bike if you promise to ride bikes with me. And she said, okay, let's do that. And then what happened was next is that then she says, well, why don't you get one too? I said, well, why would I need an electric bike? And she goes, well, because try climbing the hill. So I jumped on one of the electric bikes, and San Francisco is a perfect place to try electric bikes out, obviously, right? And so I jumped up and down the hill on that and saw the benefit of having an electric bike comparatively to a non-electric bike. Anyway, so I bought that bike too, and then I kind of got into the electric bike phase. I had motorcycles and things, but I found myself riding an electric bike more often than my motorcycles, just for the ease of riding it, and then the exercise component of it, like what you mentioned. Okay, I've got I've had a lot of injuries associated to my body, and so consequently, I'm very prone to trying to keep myself fit. I just got off the phone with my doctor here just a little bit ago, and it was resultant from an accident that I had here on Hawaii, which drove me into this whole idea of advocacy for better bicycle pathways. So my first bicycle ride here in on the west side, going to Lahaina, a car passed me and did a immediate right hook in front of me, and I ran into the side of him. Okay, and then I started looking at what, we don't have bicycle paths here, you know. Everywhere else in the world they got bicycle paths. Why don't we have bicycle paths here? Why don't we have bicycle infrastructure? We're a tourist community, okay? And on the west side, I call the west side the island on the island, and so it's 7 miles from Lahaina to Olawale, 7 miles from Lahaina to Kapalua, and you really don't need a car if you have proper infrastructure, especially with electric bike, to do that kind of commute, right? And so consequently, I started getting into looking at the different things associated with infrastructure. I paid my way over to Oahu. I had a conference over there called MAP 21, Moving Ahead for Progress for the 21st Century, and found out that, believe it or not, Hawaii has a significant number of laws and plans associated with infrastructure for multimodal transportation. However, there is a problem with implementation. And so there's acts or laws like Act 54, which is associated with complete streets, which you mentioned, Clint. And then there's Act 757, which is Vision Zero, meaning that the whole objective of that is to go ahead and try to eliminate any kind of injuries or fatalities associated with pedestrian bicycles and so on and so forth. So, and then there's Act 131, which I found is a really interesting read relative to the analysis and law that has been invoked for the Department of Transportation, the Hawaii Department of Transportation. And that was a recent law that was passed, but it's a great read, and it goes into detail about the study that was in all the different subcommittees and so forth put together relative to the need for multimodal transportation and sets mandates and so on and so forth. So anyway.
It's great to have all the laws in the world, but actually doing something with those and implementing them is far more important. You know, it's interesting because, you know, we are working, of course, off of more of that complete streets programs, and there's literally billions of dollars of studies put into that. And then we went through and got some initial approval of funding for a small test strip, and then it spiraled out of control. And of course, nothing really ever came of it. And I remember coming down to the final budgetary meeting, they're like, yeah, we need more research in it, even though literally over $1 billion had been put into it previously. And the consensus is 100% that alternative forms of transportation is an essential part of a functioning walkable community. So that just blew my mind to get to that part and then just have it tabled and scrapped. You want to talk about that?
Absolutely. So what ended up happening was from my research, from going over to Oahu to the conference over there, I found out about the Hawaii Bike Plan, which was a plan that was completed in 1974 originally, and laid out all the infrastructure plans for multimodal transportation, bicycle racing pathways throughout all the Hawaiian Islands. Okay. And then going into the plan, going to the west side, I found that there was a priority 1 project that was supposed to be completed within 10 years. Now we're talking about 1974. Okay. Anyway, it's called the West Maui Greenway. And the West Maui Greenway is a 25-mile avenue that is specifically for bicycles and pedestrians and non-motorized vehicles that follows the Cane Hall Road, which runs parallel to the Hanapalani Highway. Okay. It runs from the Poly all the way to Lopua Point,
Which we now call Veterans.
Pardon me now?
And we call it the Veterans Highway now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, bottom line is that I started advocating for that, and of course I came to know you, and then you were a big part of the advocacy there, and we would have all these different events down there, starting in Old Wallow primarily, because when I did my analysis, it seemed like the most logical place to start for ease of implementation was the section from Lahaina to Old Wallow, which was at that time owned partially by Peter Martin and partially by the county. So it looked like a perfect private-public partnership here. And so we did a lot towards getting some movement on that concept. Peter Martin was fully behind the whole project, and the county was willing to go ahead and look at it. And at one particular point, the county mayor, Mayor Arakawa, put in $1.5 million for the planning and implementation for the Greenway from Old Wallow to Lahaina. So that's 5.6 miles, all right? And then it went to the county council for approval. Now, at the beginning of the county council meeting, with the agenda item was supposed to be on the on this particular day, what happened was I invited all my fellow advocates to come down. I bought them all fluorescent T-shirts, and we populated the council chambers from 8 o'clock in the morning. And at 7 o'clock in the evening, there still wasn't, the item didn't come up on the agenda, or correction, on the floor. But graciously, Ricky Okama, who was running the meeting, said, hey, why don't we go ahead and let these people leave? Because we know what they're here for. So let's move the West Maui Greenway agenda up on the floor. And so at that time, David Good was on the stand, who was the Public Works Director. And Ricky says to David, well, what do you think about this $1.5 million West Maui Greenway? And then David says, well, there's no way the Public Works can possibly plan and implement a Greenway within a year and a half. Okay.
Something that's already planned.
It's already planned, right?
Yeah.
And what's a Greenway exactly consist of? So we're talking about the Cane Hall Road, which is an existing roadway, which just needs a little bit of improvement in some places, because that section of road, a lot of it's already paved. So it just already is there, and it serves perfectly right now as a functional bikeway, but it has some imperfections along the surface, right? So we're talking about potentially a 10-foot piece of asphalt, 2 inches thick, over an existing road bed. That's what we're talking about.
I remember when we were looking at the budget, because I think it was 12 foot wide, and since it already been improved, the cost would have been significantly under the $1.5 million for our test section, I remember.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I got a proposal from Maui Paving that said that they would do the whole thing, $820,000. They paved the thing 10 foot wide, 2 inches thick, from Old Wallow to Lahaina, $820,000.
Yep.
Okay. Well, anyway, so Ricky says to David, well, what do you think? And David says, well, give me $300,000 and we'll do the plan. Right. So
plan that's already done.
yeah. So anyway, they gave him $300,000, and then at the time, they signed an engineer from Public Works to be the point person on this project, who I communicated with. Well, the engineer told me that the Department of Public Works doesn't have the tools in their toolkit to actually plan and implement a Greenway. So they have to outsource the project to an outside vendor. I said, okay, well, what's involved in that? He said, well, it requires a scope of work. I said, okay, well, why don't we get a scope of work and get this plan going, you know? So literally, they kicked the can down the road for 1.5 years before they actually went ahead and did the scope of work. But in between, they shifted everything from the 5.6 miles to 0.7 of a mile from Keawe Street to Fleming on sugarcane train tracks. And then when they finally did the scope of work, I had the opportunity to look at it, and they provided that to Unawara Engineering. But anyway, they gave $24,000 allocated for aerial photography for 0.7 of a mile on existing road bed railroad tracks, sugarcane train tracks.
Bananas, bananas.
I know. I said, hey, nothing for nothing. I'm a helicopter pilot. I can rent a helicopter $1,500 an hour, fly from Kahului to Lahaina, 20 minutes. I can hover over there for 20 minutes. How many pictures do you think you can take in 20 minutes from a helicopter? Any direction, any altitude, whatever you want me to do, I can move this helicopter whatever way you want and be back in 20 minutes. It's
And
50
then
bucks.
also back then, I also had my drone license. I took some drone shots for the newspaper, and also I volunteered for free that I would be able to map the entire thing so I could 3D render it if they needed. Instead, they just love wasting money, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, what ended up happening is that they ended up spending the 300 plus another 130 for environmental assessment, okay, which is not really required under county law for an existing road bed for a greenway. But anyway, they spent that too. So that's $430,000 invested for the 7/10 of a mile on the sugarcane train tracks. And then when they finally got that all completed, I asked for the actual the results. Let me show what we paid for, and that was become kind of a difficult thing. But anyway, when we finally got down to it, they said we can't proceed anymore because it's too complicated. So that money was basically flushed, literally flushed. Anyway, so then we ended up having a real benefactor.
Wait, that's not even the worst part. Tell them about all the work that they did and how they wouldn't even let you see the results of the studies that they did.
Yeah, that's true. So it took me 2 years to actually get what was done. I have to go ahead and go to the state and request them to go ahead and provide me the project results. And they finally did, and I have that in my shelves over here, but it's just some pictures. And again, it seemed like a total waste of money. And again, I thought that this looked a lot like fraud, waste, and abuse to me. But anyway, there's not anybody I can talk to about that at the county level that would be willing to go ahead and accept that as a possibility.
So how does that evolve now into the more recent Act 131, which is what, circa 2021, right?
Yeah, so 2021 Act 131 basically lays out the fact that its purpose is to go ahead and move the idea of dependency on the automobile, the car-centric type of thinking that the Department of Transportation has, get them away from that and get them moving towards multimodal transportation. What the Act does state is that what it's found is through studies is that when you actually spend all kinds of money on expanding current auto-centric infrastructure, what ends up happening is that infrastructure automatically fills up automatically in a short period of time, which basically states that no matter how much infrastructure we build for cars, it's just going to get plugged up anyway. So what we got to do is we got to try to reduce the automobile dependency and move towards alternative transportation. And then there's certain mandates associated with Act 131 that HDOT is supposed to go ahead and comply with. However, when I asked, they're supposed to, at the end of the year, they're supposed to go ahead and actually report on things associated with, projects initiated, underway, or completed during the preceding calendar year, the status of each project initiated or underway during the preceding calendar year, the report for each project as required by subsection B, and 4, a progress update outlining for department success in meeting the goals described in subsection A. Well, I asked Representative Hashimoto, who happens to be the MPO chair, well, how about that report? And he can't find anything about any report that's been completed. So bottom line, there's been no action relative to the act or the law that specifies that HDOT is supposed to do these things.
So here's the thing that I want to kind of get on my soapbox about, and is very important for the listeners to take into consideration. The county doesn't do anything unless you tell the county to do something. They need the public to reach out and tell them this is an important lifestyle decision. There's laws in place and they need advocacy. So I want them to go to the West Maui Greenway, and that's westmauigreenway.org, right?
Yes, westmauigreenway.org is our website that we have.
Yeah. So here's the problem. From the 1930s, we have definitive studies, plans of action, and opportunities to improve Maui's people so that they can have alternate forms of transportation. They have messed around for decade after decade after decade, purposely not implementing plans that are ready to go, that are proven, because they feel that it's too complicated and too difficult. Nobody wants to make it their problem. We have somebody here, Lee, who is passionate about the project and would be the perfect person to help implement this, and or using a county representative that at least finds this necessary for Maui's people to go forward. So if you're tired and angry of hearing things where money gets spent, where nothing happens, or money gets improperly allocated, like the hundreds of thousands of dollars towards aerial photography, which is completely unnecessary, on a plan that they even refuse to show somebody who's trying to implement a plan, I think you should be going on westmauigreenway.org, trying to reach out to Lee so that he can help direct you on who to email and who to talk to, so something actually happens after 50 plus years. So make sure that you listen to what we're saying right now, because nothing's going to happen unless you get out there and make it happen. So tell us a little bit more about the advocacy part and how everybody's kind of wanting to wash their hands of this.
Yeah, so currently what we have is the previous MPO, Lauren Armstrong, who was a gem, actually got some of the things implemented and was able to create what they call the West Maui Greenway Final Plan. That was completed in September. In the West Maui Greenway Final Plan, it has specific things relative to planning and implementation, and they're also she was the MPO, by the way, she was able to go ahead and get an allocation for the West Maui Greenway funding to start in fiscal year 24. So currently there's something to STIP, we got all these different acronyms, STIP, TIP, TAP, all these different acronyms, right? But anyway, the bottom line is MC28 is the TIP, and it specifies that in 2024, they're supposed to go ahead and the public works is supposed to go ahead and start PE2, which is planning and preliminary engineering. And
seems pointless to me since all the planning has already been done, but yeah.
The preliminary engineering, which is one of the steps towards construction. In fiscal year 26, the construction is supposed to begin, according to the STIP. But the problem is that Public Works hasn't accepted the STIP into their project.
So they've made plans to make plans, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And then so I'm trying to get a county advocate to represent the West Maui Greenway, someone I could work with to move these things forward, because it's very complicated. And there's also another grant. So there's all this different money out there. So currently Hawaii got $2.8 billion for federal infrastructure. And then Maui County supposedly got 2.4% of that, which equates out to $67,200,000 is what my calculation is. You can do that probably in your head. 2.8 billion, 2.4%, $67,200,000 is what my calculation.
I like how we have 5-6% of the Hawaii's population, and then we get 2% of the funds.
2.4%, correct.
Yeah.
And then there's also funding available through the Maui rental car surcharge and all that. But anyway, what the tip says is that the 25 miles of construction probably costs $13 million, what the project total cost will be. Now you relate that to the 2.6 miles of the bypass that costs $100 million, and you can see that bike pedestrian pathways is probably a much more economical, inexpensive way of creating infrastructure, okay, comparatively. And additionally, going back to Act 131, it says that you get the best bang for your buck for bicycle pedestrian pathways. They say that you get $17 back for every dollar you invest. So what's wrong with doing this? I don't know.
I've got a question. Clint, I've got a question for Lee. Is the plan the plan is the West Maui Greenway first, then expand from there for a simpleton like me? And is it going to be used for that West Maui Gateway? Is it going to be used for just, cruising or, getting to A to B to shopping? What are you looking for? Or what is this, for the simpleton like me?
Yeah, so first of all, the Greenway is not going to be implemented all in total. The actual plan says that we have segments that we're going to do. The first segment that they recommend, which is going to be, they evaluate, is going to be the simplest section, is the section from the rec center in Lahaina to Laniapoko Beach Park. Okay, it's 2.2 miles. So what we're looking at doing is creating a 12-foot path, 2-foot buffers, 2.2 miles from Lahaina to Laniapoko. Okay. And then there's the other segments that will be done later. But anyway, the priority right now is to do the 2.2 miles from Lahaina to Laniapoko. And what are we going to get out of that? Well, basically, the concept is, I can read it to you, but it's supposedly provide safe and welcoming recreation and transportation opportunities for the community separated from traffic along the Hanapalani Highway. Design guidelines will follow the West Maui Greenway Master Plan. The West Maui Greenway Master Plan is listed under the Maui MPO website. You can go there and look at plans, and then you can download and look at the West Maui Greenway final plan. And then you go back to, or go to the back part of the plan, and there you will go to chapter 6, page 108, which is implementation. Prioritization, page 110, that lays out the different segments that are prioritized, and then the opportunities for funding. And we just kind of touched on that briefly. Again, $2.8 billion to the state of Hawaii, $67,200,000 for the Maui. There's lots of different monies there. And next steps, page 117, very simple to follow, okay? Again, not a difficult project. 12-foot wide path, existing roadbed, 2-foot buffers on existing roadbed. Okay.
Okay.
So does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, what I'll do is let me share the screen for just a moment here. So I got this screen share. I will go to share, and then you can see what I'm doing here. This is the West Maui Greenway. If you go to westmauigreenway.org, and you can kind of see the master plan. So let me get back over here a little bit. And you can see now this is the total path. Now what he's talking about initially is just a small section that goes from Lahaina to Laniapoko here. But the idea is to have alternative forms of transportation so people can get all around West Maui. Obviously, Act 131 isn't just specifically for Lahaina, it's for, everything in general to have alternative forms. They have mandated laws in order to create that. But if you go through, this breaks down a lot of the master plan. You can see there's photos and improvements that really show that it's ready to go. Things that utilize like the old rail lines, alternative cane roads, and it's a very detailed plan, which is one of the reasons why I find it see, this is my favorite part right here. It shows all the little offshoots and opportunities to connect, housing with schools and grocery shopping centers and whatnot. So it's a very nice, immersive, well documented if you go to westmauigreenway.org. So I highly recommend you going there and checking that out. And I will turn off this screen share for her.
That's great. Thank you, Clint, for that. Yeah. that's the easiest way to understand and learn about the plan. Okay, so the plan. Now, we got to get to implementation. And currently, we don't have a county representative that wants to be the point person in supporting this plan. And I've done a lot of solicitation associated with that, and we haven't got any responses back. There is something called TAP funding. And in the implementation part, next steps, it says find funding for environmental permits. Okay. So what I did is I have put together a grant application for TAP funding from the Maui Bicycle League. As a nonprofit, we are authorized to go ahead and submit for TAP funding, but we need a county sponsor to sign off as being a partner for that. And so I've actually completed the application, and I'm asking somebody from the county to be a sponsor for the Maui Bicycling League to request permits to be completed. And that cost currently, just FYI, it's $108,000 to have the permits completed. And there's a 20% match to that. And so Maui Bicycling League potentially, because the county is not supporting it, is going to stand up and pay the 20% if necessary. Okay, but again, I need a county sponsor to sign on the application to be able to submit the application to the county or the federal government, excuse me. And that all has to be done by April 2nd. Otherwise, that money's not available anymore.
And this is why we need the listeners to go to westmauigreenway.org, try to contact Lee through there so that we can get directions so that they can talk to their representatives like the mayor, county council, and explain that we need somebody to stand up and make this a priority. It's been 50 years of mismanagement and kicking the can down the road. And there's multiple laws in place that they have just looked the other way for. So until the county makes this a priority, it's going to continue to be a problem. And, you know, I think this would actually be a fantastic segue to kind of start talking to Joanna Zeigler, because if the states and counties aren't going to listen to the laws that they've mandated, it's important that, you know, legal action be taken. So before we go to Joanna, Lee, do you want to wrap up a little bit? Obviously, we're going to keep on talking about the West Maui Greenway a bit, but I think this is a good opportunity to segue.
Well, I think so too, Clint. It really does give a good opportunity for, you know, we've got to come up with some way to motivate the state, federal, and county people to go ahead and do what the laws and recommendations and requirements are relative to alternative transportation. And I think we're very fortunate to have Joanna Zeigler and the company that she represents here to go ahead and talk. So it's a perfect opportunity to go ahead and do this segue. Thank you.
So, and this is important too. I mean, this is not, even though we're talking about West Maui Greenway, this is for all of Maui. So if you want to make Maui a better place and more connected community that we don't rely on cars, you have to go to westmauigreenway.org, sign up there and find out how you can make your voice heard and how you can tell the county that this is important. So Joanna, now we've kind of been talking about the fact that so many different state and federal departments have been dragging their feet about stuff that's been important to the United States and well documented in research since the 1970s. Now legal action is starting to become. So please introduce yourself and talk a little bit more about ourchildrenstrust.org.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me on the show this morning, and aloha to everybody who's listening. As you said, my name is Joanna Zeigler, and I am an attorney over here on Oahu, and I'm with a nonprofit public interest law firm called Our Children's Trust. And Our Children's Trust represents young people in constitutional climate change lawsuits in an effort to secure their rights to a healthy climate system.
And you're part of the lawsuit for this West Maui? Can you?
No,
explain-
so she
Oh, sorry.
specifically deals with more of it on a federal level. So
Oh,
there's
federal
actually
level?
multiple cases going on throughout the United States on the state level. This more specifically deals with the Department of Transportation. So go on and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, please.
Yes, yeah. So as you mentioned, we do have lawsuits across the country, including here in Hawaii. And here in Hawaii, we represent, along with our co-counsel Earth Justice, 14 youth plaintiffs who have brought a lawsuit against the state of Hawaii, the governor, the Department of Transportation, and its director. And whereas Lee was kind of concentrating his efforts in challenging the transportation system from a safety perspective, these youth are coming at it from a human rights perspective. And they have filed this lawsuit alleging that the defendants operate the transportation system, and that operation results in high levels of greenhouse gas emissions. And that violates their constitutional rights because it causes them significant harm in undermining their ability to live healthful lives in Hawaii now and into the future.
All right.
So,
yeah, no, go on.
Oh, go, yeah.
So I was just going to describe the constitutional provisions that the youth plaintiffs have brought their suit under, and it's under the Hawaii Constitution. And we have some really powerful constitutional provisions here in Hawaii. One of them guarantees the right to a clean and healthful environment. And that right has been affirmed by the Hawaii Supreme Court to ensure the right that right is to a life-sustaining climate system. And then we have another provision in the Hawaii Constitution called the Public Trust Doctrine, and that requires that the defendants in this case conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and natural resources for the benefit of present and future generations. And so in their complaint, the plaintiffs allege that climate is also a natural resource because it is encompassed and interrelates with all other natural resources like land, air, and water. And so really the purpose of this lawsuit is to make sure that these rights to a healthy climate system are being applied to the transportation system.
What is the status of the lawsuit right now? Are you guys litigating it or in mediation? Where is it at?
Sure. So the plaintiffs filed their complaint in June of last year, and the complaint is really what launches the lawsuit and starts the case off. And in response to that complaint, the defendants filed what's called a motion to dismiss. And in that motion to dismiss, the defendants essentially argued that the case should be dismissed and the plaintiffs should be barred from presenting their case to the court. And so there was a hearing on that motion to dismiss in January, and the hearing isn't a trial. It's really just the opportunity for the attorneys to present their legal arguments to the court, but no facts are able to be presented at that type of hearing. The attorneys just get to present their arguments to the judge, and the judge indicated at the hearing that he would take it under advisement, meaning that he's still thinking about how he wants to rule on the case. So we're still waiting for that decision. We expect it to come out any day now, and we feel really confident that the judge will rule in our favor. But unfortunately,
we once you go through that process and discuss it with the judge, and if and when that he makes the approval that the case can go forward, then the next step is the discovery part, where additional research can be done and dive into kind of the nitty-gritty of where the Department of Transportation has failed to meet their required provisions, as well as their goals for creating alternative transportation, both from a health point, constitutionality on a state level, and all that sort of good stuff.
Yes, that's right. So if the judge rules in the plaintiff's favor, then we will progress towards trial. We get to do discovery, which means that we get to ask the state for documents, and they can, of course, ask us for documents. We'll do depositions and really gather the evidence, like you said, so that we can present the evidence that we get from the defendants, but also the plaintiff's stories to the judge, showing their impacts and how climate change is really affecting them. And that's a really important aspect of it, is that the plaintiffs get an opportunity to share.
Now, if people go to ourchildrenstrust.org/Hawaii, you can go to just ourchildrenstrust.org and you can see the different states like Florida, Hawaii, Montana, Utah, and Virginia, where they have cases on the state DOT. But of course, this is a Hawaii radio show, so you probably want to go just to the Hawaii one. You can meet the plaintiffs and you can solve, more importantly, you can sign a wall of support, and that might be a good opportunity for teachers that are listening to the show and parents to get their kids involved in the process, to show that their kids can make a difference in the future that they're going to have to live in. So it would really behoove you to go on to ourchildrenstrust.org/Hawaii to show your support there, as well as West Maui Greenway.
Why? I've got a question. Why 14? Why not 1,000? I'm just curious. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Did these 14 come to you? Did you say, hey, let's stop at 14? Explain that to the viewers, because they're going to say 14 people out of how many residents or whatever.
Yeah, good question. The process for gathering plaintiffs is an organic one, and it really kind of just, they do approach us to become plaintiffs, and we can decide from there who is a plaintiff. But you bring up a good point, is that it's not just 14, and these 14 youth really do represent the younger generation, the generation that is going to have to disproportionately feel the impacts of climate change. And so, although these youth can present concrete harms to the court that they've experienced from climate change and will continue to experience, certainly other folks and other youth are experiencing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. And so once this happens, if there's a ruling in your favor to go forward, then I guess the discovery and all that works through. Maybe a year, 2 years. This may take 3 years. What is this is a ballpark, because people may want to circle back and say, why isn't anything happening?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Clint mentioned, it's really great to visit the website that we have, ourchildrenstrust.org/Hawaii, because we will be updating that website as we go along. And if you visit it today, you'll see the timeline that's occurred so far. And as things progress through the court system, we continue to update that timeline. So it's a really great way to see where the case is at. And we even, will usually indicate, oh, what's coming next, and that sort of thing. And we'll post relevant documents that if people want to take a closer look at what's actually being filed, we will post them there as well. So it's a great way to sort of stay in touch and see how the case is progressing through the timeline, because as you indicated, certain things can come up and whatnot, and unfortunately right now we're still waiting for that decision before we can move forward in a significant way.
And there are cases going on in multiple states right now where they're further along in the process. Now, Joanna doesn't know the specifics on each one of those cases. She mostly deals with Hawaii, but do you know, I remember one of them is in the discovery stage, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do. We have other cases in various stages across the state, and we have one federal case. Juliana versus the United States is the case that we have in federal court. And that case is, it has actually gone through many appeals, and it was originally filed in 2015. And that case is waiting for the court to rule on a motion to amend, which amend their complaint, which we're hoping for any day now, so that one can continue to progress. But one case that we do have that's progressed even further is in Montana, Held v. Montana, which you can also see on our website. And the really exciting thing about that case is that it's currently on track to be the first climate change trial in United States history. So the trial is set for January 12th, 2023. It's one to really pay attention to. Will certainly set the tone for actions in the future, and it's going to be a really great opportunity to afford the youth their opportunity to tell their stories to the judge and bring to light the government's impacts in Montana, just like we're seeking to do in Hawaii.
So I know that you can absolutely go to ourchildrenstrust.org to show and sign the wall of support. But are you at this time able to keep or increase the number of plaintiffs?
Not at this time, but we do encourage people to sort of come out and support the plaintiffs. Whenever we have a hearing, we usually have a rally after, and that's just a great time. We had an entire class of students come to the last hearing, which was amazing to see their support. Also, if folks want to use social media, that's a great way to just get the word out. You can write, draw, or film messages to show your solidarity with the plaintiffs. And then you can use the hashtag YouthVGovHI and then tag at YouthVGov and at Earth Justice. And then that way we can repost those types of supports for the plaintiffs so they can see that. And we'll also be updating on social media. So if you follow us on Instagram, then you'll get lots of updates, and we do fun quizzes on there and talk about climate change and kind of use it as an educational tool as well. So that's like a neat thing to check out.
Instagram, huh?
We do, yes. Yeah, YouthVGov on Instagram. And I encourage people to check it out. It's a, we have updates on the cases, and then nice, neat facts and little quizzes and things like that regarding climate change. So.
Oh, wow. I'm definitely have to go on there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I just went on the webpage. You can find all the different areas you can go to. So it looks like you all are nonprofits. So most of the money coming in is from donations. Is that what it is? And so to donate, someone can go to your page?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there's opportunities to check out on the page to donate as well.
Awesome.
And show your support that way. And then also, if folks are interested in receiving online mailing lists updates, we do have that opportunity. You can go to youthvgov.org/join. And then that way you can get the updates in your email. And if there are any calls to action for donations or coming out and support or other types of opportunities, it will come through in that mailing list as well.
Oh, excellent. So as the steps go, I think, as we've been discussing, nothing happens unless there's community support. So while it's fantastic that we have opportunities, it's not going to mean anything unless somebody actually stands up and goes and does the very minimum of showing support. So I highly, highly recommend going both to westmauigreenway.org as well as your site, the ourchildrenstrust.org/Hawaii. And there it all spells it out quite simply and easily for you to absorb and see the opportunities. Of course, we're dealing with two different departments, but the funny thing is, I find it shocking that it's the same story. I mean, this is things that we've been trying to work on a national level through Complete Streets, which is a national program, down to a local level, is an absolutely essential part of implementation for infrastructure going into the future. And you can directly see, things like the prosperity of local environments geometrically increasing with more alternative forms of infrastructure. That of course includes bus and rail and, but car, the problem with that is, of course, it's dangerous and most of it is carbon based at this point. And it's not as healthy as, transportation like through bikes. So West Maui Greenway is more specific to bikes, but you guys dealing with the DOT, is that more expansive? Is that like rail lines and things of that nature?
Yes, so our challenge to the Department of Transportation is with regard to how the Department of Transportation is implementing the transportation system. And it really focuses on the fact that it focuses on the defendant's affirmative conduct, which is the policies that defendants are actively implementing that create and exacerbate the climate emergency. And rather than taking the the route of implementing programs that are reducing carbon emissions. So it all folds into that multimodal transportation, right? Rather than adding vehicle lane miles like the Department of Transportation is doing, they should be reducing the lane mile, or not reducing the lane miles, but adding multimodal transportation, concentrating on electrifying the transportation system, and also reducing the amount of vehicles that are on the road.
Absolutely. Now, my question is, of course, this might be something for both Lee and you, Joanna, is with a suit happening. This, of course, is more on a state level, international. Now, here for Maui County, we have multiple laws that have been put in place and poor implementation. Now, if they fail on this, like they have multiple times in the past, to me, it seems necessary to actually form another 501c3 and actually sue the county for their lack of implementation. Do you think that's something or a direction that might have to be taken if there is no advocacy?
Yeah, good question. I think that does relate to what plaintiffs are seeking in this case, because I think it will have a direct effect on how the counties act too. And plaintiffs are coming at this action not seeking damages from the Department of Transportation. They're seeking simply for the court to declare that the Department of Transportation is violating the Constitution, and the way that they operate the transportation system is unconstitutional. And that would require, if the court declares that, that the defendants abide by that declaration, and they have to stop their unconstitutional conduct. And because the Department of Transportation works in conjunction with the counties in creating these transportation plans, of course, that type of declaration would trickle down to county conduct as well.
So more of it, so people don't get the wrong misunderstanding. It's basically the lawsuit is for to perform versus monetary damages. Is that the way I'm hearing it?
Yes, so we're asking for a declaration from the court to say that the way that the Department of Transportation is acting now and how they operate the transportation system is unconstitutional. So so no money damages involved. We want just that declaration from the court.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't want people to be confused, right? Everybody's signing up because they think they're going to get money, when it's more of you're saying, hey, we want to hold you accountable, and not accountable in 5-10 years because it's too late or whatever. It's now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yes. The time to act is now, most definitely.
Yeah.
And that's the sad thing. I mean, this is programs that we've been talking about since, the 1970s, and trying to form multiple forms of alternative transportation, but without putting any effort forward and just, going the old route. We're just going to continue to have the same congestion issues and lack of opportunities. And I don't see any improvement until there's some sort of mandate or show that they've been violating the laws that have been put in place multiple times. Now, you specifically are you're specifically citing the state constitution. Now, why haven't you chosen other alternatives like Act 131 and whatnot? Because to me, it seems like they're violating multiple laws, not just the Constitution.
Yeah, so our main focus is the constitutional rights of these young plaintiffs. However, some of the state statutes do come into play when discussing those constitutional provisions. In addition to Act 131, there's also the zero emissions target that the state has set to have net zero emissions as quickly as practicable, but no later than 2045. So that's a big part of this lawsuit as well, saying that the defendants are required to act by the legislature by statute. It's not just that they should, act. There are definitive statements from our legislature that have required the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in our state, and it applies to the entire state and all state agencies, and including the Department of Transportation, which has only indicated that its greenhouse gas emissions are going up rather than decreasing.
No, And until there's alternate forms of transportation, they're just going to continue to go up, and that's for sure. So this is a perfect time to wrap up the show too. So I wanted to thank you both, Joanna Zeigler. I really appreciate you coming here and talking today. And Lee Chamberlain, I really appreciate your time, knowledge, and the years and years of efforts, that you've put in to try to solve Maui's transportation issues. And thank you so much, Joanna, for coming today to talk to us about what you're doing more on a state and federal level as well.
Thank you so much.
And the web pages are easy to access. I did it, both of them during this meeting. So take a look. They're both pretty easy to navigate through.
Yep. And again, just so you're all aware, that's ourchildrenstrust.org/Hawaii for the state suit about the constitutionality against the Department of Transportation, just so that they know that they need to be held accountable for the transportation that they're advocating. And of course, westmauigreenway.org. There, you can see that we've had plans in place since the 1970s about how we can incorporate bike paths for alternate forms of transportation. And if you listen to, of course, this whole show, you can hear about the decades and decades of kicking the can down the road and why nothing has happened. So please go and put support there at West Maui Greenway so that we can get an advocate and finally have some action happen that's efficient and equitable to all the people of Maui. Thank you, Byron Yap. Tell us a little bit about yourself again and what you do.
It's Byron Yap with Axia Home Loans. We do home mortgage financing for resort properties, single family homes, and a whole bunch of residential homes, properties.
And Joanna Zeigler, one more time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm Joanna Zeigler with Our Children's Trust.
And Lee, tell us a little bit and wrap it up.
Okay, well, I want to thank you, Clint, for this opportunity to go ahead and spread the word. I think this is a great thing that you're doing here with your television show or correction radio show. And thank you very much. And we hope to get something happening here in the future. There's a lot of initiatives that haven't been met. And we have great hope that things will change in the future. But
well, hopefully we won't have to do what Children's Trust and sue the county. We can just have somebody that heads us up and makes it happen on a more productive level as opposed to spinning wheels and suits happening.
Absolutely. Look forward.
So again, I'm Clint Hansen with Maui Luxury Real Estate, and you're listening to Maui Real Estate Radio on the KAOI group. You can listen to this and wherever you get your podcasts, or go to mauirealestateradio.com where we have all of our other shows. Thank you so much and have a great day. Aloha.